I
Hi.
am S. Rogers,
And I am D.L. Golden.
and
And
we're
I'm
the author's chaos.
Steve Axelrod. I
Yes,
write the Henry Kenneth Histories for Poison Pen Press. Um,
nice.
I'm doing something quite different now, but my the company was purchased by Sourcebooks, which is a bigger company, and since then things have been kind of unpredictable. I turned in my next book about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Hardly seems possible, but after 6 months, I decided that I was just not going to wait around anymore and started writing something completely different, which I'm just about to finish. I'm just finishing this weekend, actually, I'm hoping. The interesting thing is that I told the head of Sourcebooks, this woman's name is Dominique Racca, I just emailed her about the book. I said, I write these mysteries, and I have a standalone spin-off thriller that you've had for a while. I said, it's currently being looked at by the acquisitions committee or whatever, but this isn't about that. This is about this other book that I'm working on. And my wife was like, do not do that. Don't call the head of the publishing house, go above your editor's head. But it's not going above my editor's head because it's not a mystery. I mean, there's no way that Poison Pen would ever publish this book. So it's not about that. Sourcebooks publish lots of other kinds of books. So, of course, I sent it anyway. And 10 minutes later, Racca wrote me back and said, I want to see it as soon as you're done. So that was cool. Nice. 10 minutes is better than 18 months, I got to say.
Yeah, but, for sure. 100%.
Yeah, that's quite the adjustment for turnaround, I'll say that.
I don't know, who knows what it means ultimately, but it was kind of heartening. People have liked the idea. The basic idea of the book is, for years, this sort of thought has haunted me about the Holocaust and what we lost when it's kind of a great gene pool, and what did we lose when those 6 million people died? Like, what would it be like now if some of those people, hadn't died? I mean, and you just, I think about it from time to time, but then maybe it's because I saw everything everywhere all at once or something, but I was thinking about like alternate worlds, and I had this idea of a person who came from an alternate world where there had been no Holocaust because Hitler died of crib death in 1899. And so all those people didn't die. And what was his world like? And his world is like a hell of a lot better than ours. His world is good. And he's decided to help us get there. And his plan for doing it, since I also have time travel, I mean, it's fantastical craziness, but his plan is to go back into time and rescue these 4 women who, in his world, wound up being incredibly essential to creating the sustainable society that he's living in. But in our world, they died in the concentration camp. So the book is sort of 4 adventures of this guy going back in time, to the Warsaw Ghetto, to Vienna before the Anschluss, to Paris just before the American liberation of the city, and rescuing these people, and the involvements he winds up. It's funny because it was supposed to be 6, and he started getting involved with these women and these people, and it got so intense that I had to change the book changed as I was writing it, and became this highly emotional kind of romance, 2 kinds of a parental kind of romance and also romantic romance, both. I really had no idea what the hell I was doing the whole time I was writing it, but it's been kind of made. The amount of research I've done, the crazy shit I found out just researching this book, has been. In fact, if the book succeeds, I want to go to Europe and visit some of these places. There was this little village, a hidden village in the Strelsey Forest south of Amsterdam, where like 100 Jewish families lived for like 6 months. And not just Jewish families, there were like deserters from the Dutch army and German deserters and downed airmen who had escaped from prisoner of war camps and were wandering around. So it's a crazy society that and they've reconstructed it apparently. There's these huts buried in the dirt in this forest, and it's fast. The whole thing is fascinating. I look to go there. There's all these. I like to go to Warsaw. I'd like to go to Vienna. I'd like to go to all the places in my book because I don't never go anywhere and never do anything except read books and Google shit. But anyway, so hopefully next week I'll send it off to Dominique and she'll love it and she'll publish it. That would be cool. But meanwhile, my other book is just like languishing. I have no idea. Don't really understand what's going on. But
well, your new one, that's an insanely fascinating take. What genre would you like? If you're pushing that into a genre, what genre are you calling that?
I'm calling it speculative sci-fi fantasy historical romance adventure.
Let's just mash them all together.
Yeah,
It's
that's
fine.
brilliant.
Yes, basically. Is what I would, if you're going to put it somewhere in the bookshop, we're in the speculative sci-fi. I mean, because there's, string theory, multiverse, time travel, but it's all basically about tikkun olam, repair the world. That's just what it's about. This world needs some repair, let's face it. And this allows me to have all my fantasies. Like in this other world, John Lennon wasn't killed. The reason John wasn't killed in this other world is that they had electric vehicles. I don't know if you were aware of this, but that idiot who killed Lennon had tried to commit suicide by breathing the exhaust pipe of his car in Hawaii and failed. But of course, in that world, there are no tailpipes, so he just threw himself into a volcano, so there was no one to kill John Lennon. I even wrote the lyrics for a new Beatles song, which is really fun. But that's the least of it. I mean, you have a world where, like, we've dealt with climate change. One of the son of one of these women became an Exxon executive in that world, and he was the Exxon executive who actually believed the Exxon scientists and actually forced his company and all these other companies into like sustainable, energy sources and stuff. And I have the first Jewish president. That's another. And this first Jewish president blew both Carter and Kennedy out in their world, in the primaries, and then annihilated Reagan. And had 2 terms. So there was no Newt Gingrich, there was no Tea Party, there was no, all the nightmarish crap, no Trump, no Iraq war, whatever, no 9/11. It's a much better world. Anyway. And this little girl he saved from Ravensbrück grows up to become Speaker of the House. And the two of them, anyway, it's fun. It's just it's a complete, I really should just call it fantasy because it's it's like my refuge in fantasy for like what the world could be like if it hadn't gotten so insanely screwed up over the last 50 years. But anyway, it's been really fun. I'm about to finish. I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh no. I don't know what to write. I mean, all the things I was writing don't interest me anymore. I don't know what to write next. I have an idea though. I'll tell you this. Really cool. And I give you this idea because I don't think anybody but me would be nutty enough to try to take advantage of this. But I read a really interesting academic article about 1984. And they said that they pointed out that the appendix at the end about Newspeak, because he wrote this whole elaborate thing about Newspeak, that it was written in past tense. And the interpretation of this guy, and apparently a number of people have, is that this is a very subtle way of Orwell saying that this, unstoppable kind of monolithic society crumbled. Because this text about Newspeak is historical. It's like, this is how they had distorted language in this society before it crumbled. And so I'm like, oh, so they're saying that like this, the Oceania and Big Brother and all that shit, it all fell apart somehow. And I'm like, how? And so that's what I want to work on. I'm working on this. I wrote like the first 50 pages of that book in like 2 days, but I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, But so instead of writing a sequel to 1984 called 2084, that's something that I'm really interested in doing next. But, and part of me wants to do something simple. I'm a house painter. House painting's hilarious. I know a zillion anecdotes, and I had this idea a while ago about a kid who, rich kid, and his father won't let him have his inheritance unless he keeps a job for a year. So he ends up working for a Nantucket house painter, hijinks ensue. It would be so easy, no research, just sit down and like write crap that's already happened and sort of, little romance, just a simple So that's tempting. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that
It
instead.
might be a nice break from all this heavy, big, highbrow stuff that you got going
Yeah,
on.
that's what my wife says. Just have some fun, And she painted with me for years, so she knows the insane, And and also anything you really know a lot about. I don't know. You ever read John McPhee? He wrote for the New Yorker for years. He wrote nonfiction stuff. He wrote about birch bark canoes and golf players and geology and whatever the hell he wrote about. It was always really interesting because it was just you do that deep a dive into anything and it gets interesting. It's like I found that with football because my wife is a football freak, and I had it was guys jumping into piles as far as I was concerned. I was like a New York kid. I had no interest. And, I've been watching football for 20 years with her because she knows so much about the game. And as soon as you start finding out about stuff, it just gets interesting. So, I don't know. So painting's there's an interest in just someone who really knows about something, writing about it. You should be able to read my book and then paint your house perfectly after I'm done, whatever. So that's another possibility. I don't know. The mysteries, I don't know. I have 2 more in mind, but I left one. I was half done. I'm half done with the 7th one, and I'm like, why am I writing this? They don't even want the last book I wrote, or they don't want it, but they're not, they're not burning up the phone lines to get me to turn it in or whatever. So I didn't feel a lot of enthusiasm. So I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do something else.
So
and then
how long have you been writing?
I wrote my first story when I was 10. Because I realized that the elevator in my building on East 82nd Street was carrying a gun. The guy was packing. I was like, man, got a gun, And I didn't remember what my crazy story was about, but he was like undercover in this building. I was reading, James Bond novels and stuff. They were just coming out when I was that age. So I'm sure it was terrible. I remember I had this wonderful old teacher at Dalton, this private high school I went to, named Hortense Tyroler. She was this kind of rock-ribbed, iron-haired biddy of the old school. And I turned in one of my adventure stories to her. And she turned it back to me, and she had this fountain pen, and she wrote in this perfect copperplate handwriting on the top of it, "This story is flat as a pancake, dear." I love the deer. That was the best part. But anyway, so yeah, I wrote a lot of really bad shit. And it's weird because when I graduated from college, I could have gone to like grad school or something. I could have tried to go to grad, but I had absolutely, I was sure I would never get in. I knew what I was writing was crap and it was pointless. I learned how to do this sooner. It took me a really long time. They say that 10,000 hours, how about 100,000 hours? Seriously, I mean, it's just like, I remember I did I went to Hampshire, which is this experimental. I don't know what Hampshire's like these days. It almost went under a few years ago, but it seems to be back. But anyway, you didn't have a final exam, you had a Division 3 concentration. And what I did for my Division 3 concentration was I wrote a novella, and the teacher I wrote it tore it to pieces, and I looked at it later and I was like, yeah, it's bad, So it took me a long time to get even moderately good. So I never had much confidence. One of the few things I have confidence now, though, is the writing. I think I'm pretty good. I would never have tried to write this Holocaust book if I didn't feel I could pull it off,
Right.
Well, I mean, you're 6 traditionally published novels in, right? I mean, so you definitely have the chops to say, I know what I'm doing, at least.
Yeah, and I feel it. I feel that way, too. Also, I have a 500,000-word Hollywood novel that I broke into 2. Which everyone reads it, loves it, but I don't know. It's outdated now. I would have to update it to, streaming and all this other crap. I'm in the Writers Guild, but that's a long story, and so I'm technically on strike, but I haven't worked in Hollywood for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got a development deal with a guy who did a show called Barney Miller a long time ago. Barney Miller was a half-hour cop situation comedy, kind of like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, kind of the forerunner of something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Danny was like 6'7" in cowboy boots, Jewish guy, and I had written this screenplay about a father. So my father's George Axelrod. He was a pretty famous writer. Wrote The 7-Year Itch and How to Murder Your Wife and Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Manchurian Candidate and a bunch of other stuff. and I was sort of toiling in his shadow for years. And I wrote a thing about that called One Man Show, and it was under option for years. I must have made like $150,000 from that over how many years? Oh, years. 15. How much? If it takes 20 years to make that money, you're not really making that much money in any given year. But it was always under option. And I remember the father was named Harlan Mallory in the thing, and I remember Danny Arnold saying, "Hey, Danny," and I was like, "Hey, Danny, whatever." And then when I couldn't please him, and when I finally turned in another script, just write something. Just write what you want to write. Just write something. I don't care. He was paying me like these development deals. I was getting like $4,200 a week, and if he signed up for the next step, it would have been like $6,200, and then Anyway, so I turned in a script, and his response to it was, "How did the kid who wrote One Man Show write this piece of shit?" I was like, I don't really know how to answer that one, Danny. It was like pretty much the same process, though, hitting the keys. Open final draft. I don't know. Anyway, so, but Danny did get me into the Writers Guild. He was a guild signatory producer. So that was cool. And because I needed root canal. You haven't lived till you've walked into a dentist with Writers Guild insurance. It's like, please, would you like some tea? Would you like, it's the best insurance in the world. I mean, Michael Chabon, who's a wonderful novelist, he tries to do a screenplay every year just so he can keep the Writers Guild insurance. It's the only reason he works in Hollywood, is just to keep the freaking insurance.
Right.
So, there's a word for me, I don't know what it is, inert, or, I don't know, non-active, inactive member or whatever. So you only get all those advantages if you've actually worked in the calendar year. And that's why Chabon's always hustling, to write a Spider-Man movie or whatever he does.
Yep.
But so I don't have any of the advantages, but it's fun to be in the guild and sort of. I'm definitely rooting for them.
Right.
Really cool. We haven't met anybody who has been associated with the Writers Guild yet. I think we've had a few people that we've talked to, that they emailed us and said, "Hey, I'm a writer. I'd like to come on. I've written on these shows and stuff." And after the writers' strike happened, it seemed like a lot of people they've been busy. They've been out striking and doing all this other stuff, and so we haven't heard back from anybody else on that. So it's really cool to have somebody.
Classically, when there's a Writers Guild strike, all the writers start writing novels and stuff. They're busy. They're finally going to get to that novel, and then they find out that it's actually a little trickier. Because when you write a screenplay, I've written like 15 screenplays, for what it's worth, which isn't much. But there's a lot you don't do. Virginia Woolf said something I really liked one time. Her husband said, Leonard said, "How was your writing? How did writing go today?" And she said, "Oh, it was great. I got them off the couch, across the room, and through the French doors onto the veranda." And if you write, you really understand. It's like these transitions are incredibly intricate and difficult. All the spine stitching. If you write a screenplay, it's just like cut to veranda, or whatever. And then you have. I remember my dad told me this story about it was like Clark Gable and some big actress of the day, and they'd written this thing where they were trying to. One was in the East Village and one was in like Harlem, and they were trying to meet in Times Square for the 42nd Street ball drop or something like that. And the guy said, why would he be interested in her, and what would she be doing that, and blah blah blah. And the guy said to the studio executive, when it's Carol Lombard and Clark Gable, all you care about is when, not why. And it's like it's like The Godfather. Okay, it's a perfect example. I just watched The Godfather again, and I read it again also recently. And the book's good. It's compulsive reading, but it doesn't have Brando in it. The Don Corleone in the book is just a lesser figure than the Don Corleone in the movie because of Brando. And times 10 for Al Pacino. It's the greatest thing he ever did.
For sure.
Don't you know I could never let that happen, Kay? Don't you know I would use all my power to stop that from happening? Unbelievable. So, movies do that for you. They give you these amazing characters and these transitions, and there's music and the settings. When you write, a guy who's in Chicago, Oh yeah, okay, let's go. Chicago, what about it? That's on you. You have to make Chicago real. I mean, obviously it's not going to be the real Chicago, like Hemingway's Pamplona in Sun Also Rises. Right? That's very different to me than probably whatever the real, who knows what the real Pamplona looks like. I'm sure it doesn't look anything, but at least it's real for me. We made it together. That's what I love about reading. You make this shit together. But, none of that's necessary. Just put a camera and point it at Chicago. Boom, done. You know what I mean? So it's a lot easier in some ways to write a screenplay. Basically, all you need is the structure and the dialogue. And that's about it. And if you've been doing that for years and you suddenly realize, oh my God, I can't just say exterior, Daily Plaza, Chicago. I've got to like describe it. Like, what does it look like and smell like and whatever, And that's what I've had. Like, my guy goes to Warsaw and I have to describe Warsaw now and Warsaw then. And I've never been either place. A friend of mine actually lived in Warsaw for 5 years and he helped me a lot. So that was good. But like, it's a lot more work writing. But the thing about it is, it's also much more satisfying to me because then it's like, it's all you. Yeah. Sometimes, especially with these mysteries where I'm writing these intricate plots and stuff, and they're like little Sudoku games or something, you sort of think, oh, it'd be so nice to be like Vince Gilligan, and have an 8-person writer's room doing Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad or whatever. And you could say you have a big whiteboard. Let's beat this one out. Let's break this 5th episode of season 6, I don't have that. I just got me. Sometimes I'll say to my wife, or my son's a good writer. Sometimes I'll call him and I'll say, "What? How would this work?" And he's, But mostly I'm just on my own, And ultimately, I like that because then when it's finished, it's like it's all mine. Like it or don't like it or whatever, but at least it's just my thing. I made a thing. What does Sondheim say? I made a hat. I made the hat. It's my hat. So I like that. I like it.
Yeah. You are completely traditionally published, right? You don't have any indie works that you publish.
Oh no, I have 3. I go 3 ways. So indie, I have the 6 books that are published, and then I published a very dark noir thriller called Heat of the Moment with a tiny micro publisher called Gutter Books. And my agent was like, well, it's basically self-publishing. It's like glorified self-publishing, I was like, well, Alan, not really, because the difference between Gutter Books and self-publishing is at least one other person had to think your book was okay.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but at least one guy had to like your book besides you, to get it published. I don't really have much. I published my Hollywood novel, self-published it, mainly because I just wanted people to be able to read it. And I knew that, that was the only way. No one's going to look. If you look at that manuscript pile, just bring the truck around. We have the manuscript. No one's going to. It's daunting. Yeah. But the book is nice, and my sister-in-law is a very good graphic designer, and she did a kind of a Chip Kid type cover for it. It looked really cool. And then I published a thriller, which I've been sort of, using for parts ever since. Like my friend collects Vanagons, Volkswagen vans, and he always has 4 of them, and he's using the brake lines for one for the other, or he's got he's always cannibalizing them for whatever Vanagon he's actually using at the moment. And that's what I've done with this thriller, which I've self-published. A lot of the things that I used in there, I've used, adapted, changed over, and so it's not really, people. I get these calls from these weird groups that say, "We will help you, sell your self-published book. We can get your self-published book." And I'm like, "No, I don't want that sold. That book's dead. I've already." And there's more stuff I want to take out of it. There's a scene where the guy fights his way out of a Upper East Side, post-war high-rise building, which is a really fun action sequence that didn't really make any sense, that book, because he was a kid and he really wasn't an appropriate Rambo figure. Plus, he was shooting at Secret Service people, which made him seem like kind of a psycho. Anyway, that was bad. But the action beats in it are great. So I'm taking them at some point. But so I did publish those 2 books self-published. And what I came away from was it's a bad thing to do. It's a stupid, self-indulgent, bad thing to do. And there are gatekeepers because there's gates, and there's gates for a reason. Um, like in my Hollywood novel, my guy, the hero is he's a producer who kind of flamed out, and now he's working for the story department at Fox, and he loves this script written by my heroine. It's kind of Sleepless in Seattle. They don't meet for a long time, but they cross paths all the time. And his boss doesn't like the script, and so he goes to her boss and gets fired. You don't do that. So in firing him, his boss says to him, you hike in the canyons all the time, right? With your dog, you and your wife. I remember you saying something to me about that. And he says, yeah. Well, have you ever noticed those enormous wooden structures, like U-shaped wooden structures that they have in the canyons? They're called debris basins. You ever seen those? And he's like, yeah, what about them? Well, their purpose is, after forest fires, when the ground is unstable and there's mudslides in the next rain, they catch the debris and prevent it from overwhelming the houses below. You know, that's your job. Your job is to catch all the crap that comes in, and so we don't have to deal with it. Your job is to say, oh, this piece of garbage and this piece of trash and this chunk of a destroyed house might have some value. No, you just lumber. Just do your fucking job, and no one's interested in your opinion, basically. And I did that job for a while. I was a scriptreader in Hollywood for quite a while, and I read a lot of bad scripts. A lot of bad scripts. They all had somebody named Bubba in them. And Bubba, whatever Bubba did, he had a girlfriend who didn't approve of it. And he was always going off to do it. And she was saying, if you leave here, I won't be here when you get back. I can't tell you how many scripts I read that line. And Bubba always says, hey, I'm a cop, damn it. Or I'm a firefighter, damn it. Or, I'm a dental hygienist, damn it. Or whatever the fuck he is. Anyway, so I read a lot of really bad scripts. And it's actually good to read bad scripts because you learn a lot of what, not to do. Don't have a character named Bubba, for instance. I don't.
So that kind of actually segues us pretty good into the question we always ask all of our writers. What is a piece of writing advice that you just stand by, that you think is the best piece you've ever got?
Best piece I've ever got? Well, there's practical and there's artistic. Hemingway's really good piece of practical advice is never finish a scene that day. Always leave off when you're going good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back and you want to pick it up the next day. If you write yourself all the way down, and this is what he said Faulkner did. He said he would have given up his career to be Faulkner's editor. If you write it all the way into the ground every day, you're starting from scratch. It's like getting on the bicycle at the bottom of the hill every day, instead of having any momentum for going up.
Mm-hmm.
Somerset Maugham said there's 2 rules for writing a novel, but no one knows what any of them are. But he had a good rule, too. He said, if it should occur to you to cut something, do so. If just this strange thought passes your mind that maybe you could cut that, do it. So I think that's really good advice.
That's really good advice.
For me, if I was going to give it from my life, I would say the feeling that you have when you're writing of being out of control and having no idea what you're doing and sort of a kind of a weird, helpless, panicky, that's good. That's a good thing. Embrace that, because that means things are happening that are interesting. Because the front part of your brain that wants to know where you're going and is making all the outlines. I have a friend who he makes outlines. He's never written a book. He has these 70-page outlines in which he successfully completely kills the story because there's nothing left.
Right.
That part of you that's making the outlines is meaningless. That's for proofreading. The part of you that's writing the book is writing the book. That's why I don't like people who say, well, if you're going to have a character, make a dossier on your character, list all their traits. And, it's bullshit. Every character, it's like every egg in your uterus or whatever, is there from birth. Every character you're looking to write is there. They're there. Just name them. You name a character and suddenly it's like, they're coming, they're coming out. And if you don't have that, if the characters don't come, if they don't sort of take over, get a different job.
That is
seriously. You're probably
Yes, that's great advice.
probably not. This is probably not the job for you.
Right.
Like in this thriller that I just wrote, this guy, his organization has been destroyed. He's sort of anonymous again. He decides to go home, and he goes back to Nantucket. He was raised on Nantucket. He goes back to the Nantucket of my Henry Kenneth book. So he needs all the same. It's a spin-off, but it's also a standalone. But anyway, I wanted to have a little Jack Reacher thing on the way back to Nantucket. So he'd like meet random people and help them out. Like he saves a girl at a gun show from getting mugged, and this guy tries to carjack him. Carjacking Mitch Stone, not a great idea. But he helps the guy, helps the guy out. He gives the guy $2,500 because he's hitting this nightmarish down swirl of, I won't go into the details, but just, horrible. And the guy says to Mitch, he says, this is great. I mean, I appreciate this so much, but like, who has $2,500 in cash in their car? And Mitch says, bad people. But he's trying to be the shepherd, Ringo. Anyway, and so the last one I wanted was to have him help this kid, like help a runaway kid. And the kid took over the book. The kid became the center of the book, both morally and in terms of the plot. The whole plot hinges around the kid. So I have to believe, I'm not going to do a mumbo jumbo about the kid as a separate life and he took over, but I do believe that kid was living in my unconscious and wanted to come out. And the real idea of the book, of this kid forming the central moral hinge of the book, was always there. I just wasn't aware of it consciously. Right. And the more you press and kind of everything and try to be totally in control consciously, the less chance that kid has to come out.
Right.
I remember bitch pulled over the side of the road and offered to adopt the kid. And I was like, what are you doing? You're adopting the kid? I don't even know this kid. What the fuck? But part of me was just like, hey, Mitch wants to adopt the kid, so don't argue with Mitch Stone. Mitch Stone says something's like killing two birds with one stone. And this guy who knows him says, Mitch could actually probably do that, You around the first rock off the beak of the first one, it hits the other one, whatever. So he's the kind of... there's a line I love in the book where he's kind of cleaning up the drug problem on Nantucket, which is a huge thing. Mm-hmm. And this Hispanic drug boss on Nantucket says to him, I know what you are. You don't fool me. Afghan vet, can't sleep, got the cold sweats, PTSD, you don't scare me. And Mitch says, no, you got me wrong. I don't get PTSD. I give it. Anyway. I left Mitch. Anyway.
It's a good line.
Just cool. I think everyone would want to be him. He's the coolest. He's, badass for the heart of gold. But tell that to source books. Please, somebody tell that to source books. Anyway, but the point is that Ricky just took over the book, Mm-hmm. And Rebecca, the little girl that Tom saves from Ravensbrück, took over the book I just wrote.
Yeah.
She became... And he felt the first woman he saved, he fell in love with. That was not the plan for him to fall in love with this woman. But his connection with these two women becomes the entire story.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, whatever. You have to, if the door opens, go through it. That's my advice from writing.
That happens for most of us, where our characters just kind of...
If you love to write, I think it happens.
Yeah, I think it happens for sure. So we're going to have to wrap up here pretty soon. Okay. Where can everybody find you, Stephen?
Well, my books are, Amazon. They're all available. You go to Kirkus. Kirkus has been really nice to me over the years. Okay. I remember my editor at Poison Pen saying that Kirkus always puts a little zinger in at the end. Mm-hmm. Despite the weak characterization and flimsy this, blah, 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 at the very end. But I've never gotten that. Kirkus has always been basically extremely charitable toward my work. So go to Kirkus and read about the books, and or go to Amazon and buy them. My editor told me that the first one was called Locals, and the second one was called Owners, and that's how I was going to go on that way. And she said, no, you got to put Nantucket in the title. So, and about a week later, a painting customer, said, I don't have my checkbook. I'm going to have to give you Nantucket Sawbucks, which Sawbucks, a $10 bill, old school. And some people call them Nantucket 10s, but it's a $100 bill. The idea is that $100 buys about $10 worth of stuff on Nantucket. And it's hilarious because these billionaires are complaining about it,
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so I said, Nantucket Sawbuck, perfect. So then I was stuck with denominations. Nantucket Sawbuck, 5-spot, brand, penny, whatever. So that's where I went with the denomination titles to brand myself. That's
So
where
can-
they.
Do you have any social media?
Can they follow
anything
you,
that people
like,
can
on
find you,
TikTok?
or
TikTok, yes, I'm on TikTok. That's why I found you, I think.
Yay!
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
So-
I have 1176 followers now.
hey,
Woo!
It took a long time.
when
I think the
worked-
kind of stuff I talk about fairly abstruse crap. You know, I don't. You know, I'm not like I see people who have like tons of followers on TikTok. It's like you should have a goal. You see the character has a goal and a problem. You know, it's like right, and be sure your sentences have verbs in them. Whatever. So a lot of the advice I hear on TikTok is like, I mean, it's great. This one guy, he's a teacher. He's like teaches 7th grade or something. He's got a fantasy book coming out. His name is Mark Gregson. Very nice guy. Very nice guy. And I realized that a lot of his advice was so basic because he's literally used to teaching 7th graders. You know, and if you're writing on the 7th grade level, this guy would be a huge help. He talks about how to indent your dialogue and stuff. You know? It's like, I'm going to take a note of that. Okay, but the stuff I talk about is a lot more complicated. And I don't think there's just that many people. I get about 250 people watching each one. I think it's the same hardcore 250 people. I'd like to meet them all. That would be fun. In a room, it would be spectacular. Online, it's like nothing. But anyway, I'm on TikTok. I'm on Facebook, but that's because I'm old.
We'll get all those links and stuff from you. You can send those to our email, and we'll make sure they get linked in the description.
Sure, absolutely.
People can absolutely find you. It has been amazing talking to you.
Yeah,
That's
for
fun.
sure.
I am Carl Golden, and my book Origins is on Amazon. If you guys were looking for it, this is
SF Rogers. I'm still in the throes of edits, but I promise Execration of Autumn's coming. Thank you guys.